forum. I'm Edmundo Lijo. I'm an assistant city attorney with the city of St. Paul, and I manage the immigrant refugee program for the city. And this is a monthly meeting that is co-hosted by the cities of Minneapolis, Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, and the City of St. Paul Immigrant and Refugee Program. And we address topics of interest and concern to immigrant and refugee residents and individuals and organizations that serve immigrant and refugee communities. This monthly series originated as a way to unpack federal immigration policies, programs, and actions in news. The forum has expanded beyond immigration updates to include discussions on a variety of topics that impact Minnesota residents and communities and government speakers and updates. So welcome everyone. And with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle to introduce herself.
Yep, thank you everyone for being here. My name is Michelle Ribeiro. I'm the director of the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs for the City of Minneapolis, an office that is dedicated to welcoming newcomers and connecting individuals who are born outside of the United States, regardless of how long they've been in the city, to resources and opportunity in the city of Minneapolis. And I'll turn it back to Edmundo to start with our agenda.
Great, Michelle. Michelle, our first item on the agenda is Latino Heritage Month. And I don't know if there are people from the city of Minneapolis here, resource group.
Yes, Monica Romero, thank you so much for being with us today. I'll turn the mic over to you.
Thank you, everyone. And please know that I have followed your meetings in one way or the other and not necessarily present every time. But I asked Michelle, please not delete me from the invitation, because eventually I will set my schedule and be able to attend a little bit more. And so thank you, Michelle, for letting me present today. I hope this goes short, because I know these meetings might get full with items to discuss, but this is a time that we'd like to take city employees, members of SOMOS, the Latino ERG Employee Resource Group of the city of Minneapolis, is still preparing for a series of events to celebrate Latino Heritage Month in the month of it's celebrated between September 15th through October 15th. There are some events that are open to the public, and that's why I'm here to let you know you are welcome to attend. So we will have a kickoff on Friday, September 15th at Jefe Urban Cocina. The location is on 219 Main Street, Minneapolis. Then another public event we're going to have is, we will have cooking classes. Our super employee, Justo Garcia, is making pollo sudado, sweetened chicken, or with rice, and that will happen at our downtown fire station, 530 South 3rd Street. This one is very important for all of us, I'm sure, and we either have it on September 7th. Sorry, I didn't say when the cooking class is, on September 20th, 12 to 1. But this one on September 7th, we hope we can do it that day or the following council meeting. But at council chambers, we're going to read a resolution. The members of Latino, the ERG group, and members of the community are invited to read this resolution. If you have a specific desire for reading a paragraph, let me know. I will be happy to accommodate, and you will be able to make in history, as we try to do every year when we write in and speak out loud the resolution. The resolution actually describes the contribution of all Latinos all Latinos have made in the country, but it also highlights how much work we need to do and how much we need others to help with the work. Then we have immigration stories. That will be happening at our public service building, first floor on October 11th. We will have some of us, not me necessarily, but some of the SOMOS members talking about their stories as immigrants, as Latino immigrants. And the last but not least, it's a week-long event, and that will be happening the last week of the Latino Heritage Month, and at the downtown location in Hennepin County Government Center. The basement or the ground level has a galleria, and we're going to exhibit traditional dresses for as many Latino countries as we can possible exhibit there. Those are the events that are for the public. I also wanted to let you know that if at your departments, at the places where you work, you already have employees resource groups or not, and if you'd like to have an informational conversation in how we do things and what works, what is not work, what opportunities we've had, I am happy to have that conversation. And for the ones that are wondering what a resource, employee resource group, I'm going to read the definition I found on Google, and we feel affiliated with that description. Employee resource groups are groups of employees who join in their workspaces based on shared characteristics or life experiences. ERGs are generally based on providing support, enhancing career development, and contributing to personal development in the work environment. Thank you again. I'm super happy I was able to have this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Monica, for kicking off our Twin Cities Immigration Forum today. And if you would like people to reach out to you if they have further questions, if you wouldn't mind putting your contact information in the chat, that would be fantastic. If people have questions, you wanted to make sure that there's a heads up for community around the events that the SOMOS Employee Resource Group is dedicating to leading and organizing during Latino Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th. I know that many of these events will also be available on the city's website as we get a little closer to the dates. So thank you again, Monica. And just to keep things going with Minneapolis briefly, I know we have another City of Minneapolis employee on who is, that's right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Kayla McConnell-Diarra. From the City of Minneapolis Civil Rights Department, who is here to share some information regarding the civil rights complaint process. So I'll turn it to you, Kayla.
Thanks so much, Michelle, and thanks to everyone for having me today. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Kayla McConnell-Diarra. It's as Michelle said, and I'm the director of the Complaint Investigations Division, which is one division within the City of Minneapolis's Civil Rights Department. And I'm just here to talk a little bit about what we do and how you can interact with us. I'm very open to any questions that anyone has, and I'll make sure to leave some resources in the chat as well as forward anything along to Michelle that she can share out as well. So just to start, what we're tasked with in the Complaint Investigations Division is enforcing the Minneapolis Civil Rights Ordinance, which is the city-level civil rights law. It mirrors in a lot of ways state and federal law around civil rights. But generally what we do to enforce this ordinance is we accept complaints and investigate them, and they're complaints of discrimination. So what we have jurisdiction over within my division is discrimination that's based on protected class. Some of you I know might be very familiar with these types of terms, but I'll kind of define them as I go through for those that may not be. A protected class generally is an element of a person's identity that they cannot or should not be asked to change. So it's things like race, national origin, religion, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, and there's a few more of them as well, but that's kind of generally what you should be thinking of when you're thinking of a protected class, and that's the type of discrimination that we are looking into. Discrimination itself is being treated in some sort of negative way because of your protected class, so because of this part of your identity that you could not or should not be asked to change. We have jurisdiction over discrimination in a variety of different areas. It is the most common areas that we see are employment discrimination and housing discrimination, but we also have jurisdiction over discrimination in public accommodation, which would be kind of any place that you would be getting some sort of service. So think of visiting a store and purchasing something, joining a gym, things like that, if you face discrimination in an area like that, as well as discrimination in public services, which includes any sort of interactions you're having with city employees. So that could be police officers, that could be housing inspectors, and the like, and a variety of other areas that we don't see as often, but have jurisdiction over, all of which are delineated in our ordinance as well as our website. And I'll make sure that you all have that contact information. As is relevant to this group specifically, I will highlight that immigration status itself is not a protected class, but national origin is, and very often immigration status and animus towards someone's immigration status could be closely related to their national origin. So a lot of times when it's an immigration related issue, we still would be able to investigate it on that national origin basis. I will say too that we can only investigate things that happen within the city of Minneapolis and within the last year. We do have counterparts. I can see that we have folks from not just Minneapolis on this call, so we have counterparts in other jurisdictions as well. So the city of St. Paul's HERO department has a very similar process to ours and handles these types of cases as well when they happen in St. Paul. And then there's the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, which handles these types of cases happening anywhere throughout the state. So there are other places to go, even if someone experiences something like this, not within the city limits of Minneapolis. So moving to, I guess, one thing I want to highlight, and one thing that Michelle had asked me to make sure that I include in this presentation, is protection for people that want to file these kind of complaints, that there's definitely concern about possible retribution or what we would call retaliation. And under the Civil Rights Ordinance, there are specific protections for folks to not be retaliated against for filing these sorts of claims. So if someone were to file a claim of or a complaint of discrimination and then face something negative, like by their employer or by their landlord, that would be something that they could also report to us and that we could take action on and investigate. I will highlight that we don't see that very often when people are filing formal complaints. We certainly anecdotally know that, like, right, if you're reporting something to your supervisor or directly to a landlord or something, certainly retaliation does happen, and that's the type of thing we want to hear about and investigate. We don't see it as often when people are filing formal complaints, largely because by the time an entity is in that kind of process where they're being accused of discrimination in a formal method through the city, they're going to know that they can't retaliate against the person for engaging in that. If that were to happen, though, which of course it could, as much as we hope that it doesn't, that is the type of thing that we could include on a charge of discrimination and investigate as well. And it tends to be an easier case to make as well, because that really is so clearly delineated in the ordinance that you can't retaliate against folks who file complaints of discrimination. So to give you a kind of an overview, or I guess I'll start, before I go through an overview of our process, I'll just talk a little bit about, like, what are kind of typical scenarios that we might see? What sort of complaints could we investigate? So I have a couple different ones in different areas to give you an idea. So in an employment setting, an example could be that there is an employee in a workplace of a particular race, and maybe they're the only individual who works there of that particular race, and they're fired after they were late twice to work which doesn't sound tremendously egregious, right? So already a little bit of a red flag. But maybe they also know that there's an employee not of their race and of a race that is kind of the majority race at this particular workplace who has been late on at least 5 occasions and still remains employed. That would be something that they could submit a complaint about and that we could investigate. Another example is an individual who's struggling with English, struggling to speak English at like a store and working with a store employee trying to interact to buy something or something like that at the store. And the store employee kind of gives up, doesn't want to help them, refuses to serve them, and then makes a comment such as, go back to your country or something like that. That would be another thing that we could investigate and take action on. In the housing context, we could have 2 roommates that are actively pursuing a new place to live. They're both looking simultaneously, not necessarily together. They're calling places individually. One of the roommates has maybe a noticeable accent and a name that doesn't necessarily sound white, for instance. They call about a particular unit and are told that it's no longer available and aren't provided any access for, applying for that unit, seeing that unit, anything like that. And their roommate, who doesn't have a noticeable accent and maybe has a name that is not as specifically non-white sounding, and they're offered an application and a tour of that particular unit. That would be another instance where file a complaint. That absolutely is something we can look into. That certainly appears like it could be a denial of housing based on someone's protected class. So to get into just a little bit, and I know we don't have a ton of time, so I'm going to do a very brief overview just to give you a very general idea of what our process looks like. So the first step in our process is that someone submits a complaint. Some member of the public submits a complaint. We receive that. There's a few different ways that you can file a complaint. We try to make it as accessible as possible. So you can walk into our office during normal business hours, which is room 239 in Minneapolis City Hall, and talk to somebody and fill out a paper complaint form. We also have an online complaint form available in multiple languages, and I'll make sure that you have the link to that particular complaint form. It's pretty easy to fill out. We really try to make like all of the different fields, very few of them are required. So you just, as long as we have contact information and a very basic understanding of what happened, we'll reach out and figure out what we can do with that particular complaint. You can also make a complaint calling 311, which is the city's general number, and they can fill out that complaint form for you, the service representative that answers the phone. And then you can also come to our public service center at the city and file a complaint with either a person working there or on their computers that are available to members of the public. But once we receive a complaint, what we do is assess whether it looks like it falls under our jurisdiction. Is it in Minneapolis? Are they alleging discrimination based on protected class? And then we reach out and do an intake interview and get any additional information. We help them draft a charge of discrimination, which will lay out exactly what has occurred that they believe is discriminatory. And then we'll schedule, once we have that charge, we'll schedule early mediation. We use mediation a lot in our practice. We really find it to be an effective way to both get folks the remedy that they're looking for when they come to us with a complaint of discrimination. It also can be really helpful if someone's filing a discrimination complaint and they still have an ongoing relationship with someone. So say they're filing it against their landlord and they still live there, or say they're filing it against their employer and they still work there and want to stay working there. It's a way to productively address what's happening that needs to change while also still hopefully maintaining a workable relationship between the parties. But it is voluntary, so not everybody wants to do it, and it isn't always successful. If early mediation isn't successful, we do get an answer from whoever is alleged to have engaged in discrimination. So the employer, the landlord, is able to kind of lay out how they see the situation and how that might differ from the person who filed the complaint. And then the person who filed the complaint can respond to that answer. So we kind of have this back and forth between the parties to try to understand what are the two perspectives that are happening. We have to remain neutral, but then we do any additional investigating. So if we have remaining questions, which we very often do, we're asking for additional information from the person that filed the complaint, from whoever the complaint is against, maybe their coworkers, maybe other people that live in the building, witnesses, and things like that, engage in any additional investigation that we think we need. And then we make a decision as to whether the Department of Civil Rights believes that discrimination has in fact occurred and that the ordinance was violated. And we call that either a probable cause decision that, yes, we think it happened, or no probable cause that not necessarily we don't think it happened, but that there just isn't sufficient evidence necessarily to demonstrate that discrimination has occurred. I could go into way more detail about what all of that means, but I know that our time is short. So I will make sure our website is a really good resource to understand a little bit more about our process and how to access services. So I will make sure that that's in the chat. I also, on our website, we have a variety of videos. A variety is probably too large of a term. We have 2 videos, one of which is about a minute long, and then another one that's about 5 minutes long. And they both, I think, do a really good job. One, a really small snapshot, but a good kind of understanding of the very basics of what we do. And then the other one goes into some more detail about the different steps, what to expect when you're interacting with our office and when you're a party in a case. They're also available in multiple languages. We have transcripts available in multiple languages for folks that would rather read the information versus watch it in a video. So I'll make sure that those are available. On our website is also that complaint form in multiple different languages. And then I'll just highlight that we regularly work with parties that speak different languages. So we have access to Language Line, and we use that for any verbal communication that we're having with folks. But we also pretty regularly have to get things, written documents translated as well. So like when we're doing the writing a charge of discrimination and getting that translated, same with if we're getting an answer from an employer or a landlord, getting that translated, making sure folks really have the resources that they need. We're pretty familiar with doing that. I'll also highlight that we have 2 investigators with key language skills, one who speaks Hmong and one who speaks Somali. So that's really helpful as well. And then I'll also leave my contact information, email, phone number for me. Please reach out if you have questions about our process. I'm always happy to help with that and to interact. And then I'll also, if you're reaching out to me about
Kayla, I think that we're hearing some background noise. So I'll just ask you to pause. And for whoever is not muted and is speaking, if you could please mute yourself, that would be awesome. That way everyone can hear Kayla. Yep, here, let me see if I can change that. I think it's the person who's lit up as Carmen. If you could mute yourself, please, that would be super duper awesome. Let's see. Okay, thank you. Perfect. Kayla, please go ahead.
Absolutely. So I'm a great person to reach out to. I mean, really for anything having to do with our process, I'm happy to receive any of those questions. And then if you're reaching out about a specific complaint, what I'll do is connect you with one of our intake officers. I have 2 intake officers that work within our division, and they are a great resource and really good help with just, you know, if you need any assistance in the filing process and figuring out how to do that. And then they're the people that kind of help with all the logistics throughout the whole case process. So happy to do that as well. And Michelle, I'm willing to take questions, but I understand if you don't have time for questions in your agenda.
I do see one question in the chat, and thank you so much for sharing so much information in such an efficient way. The question in the chat is, what about a contractor not getting paid from a state agency? If there's any comment you can make on that, or where would you direct people for that kind of a question?
Yeah, so that's it depends, the classic lawyer answer. But what I will say is, so if it's a state agency at issue, it for sure wouldn't be us, because we only have jurisdiction over the city of Minneapolis. It potentially could be something that you could go to the Minnesota Department of Human Rights about. But I will say that at least for us and for the Department of Human Rights, it's always going to need to be discrimination based. So if the allegation is the lack of payment based on someone's protected class, then there might be somewhere we can go with that. If it's a kind of based on a different issue, we're not going to be the right place, and likely the Minnesota Department of Human Rights wouldn't be either, unfortunately.
Well,
I will say, I mean, there are, yeah, go ahead, Michelle, if you have other resources.
No, please.
There are certainly other agencies that can address those sorts of concerns. It's just not necessarily us.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Kayla. Any other questions or follow-up questions? We have like a minute, so there's a little window if people had questions for Kayla. And we have connected with the Minneapolis Civil Rights Department, and We'll have other individuals joining from the Civil Rights Department to talk through more of their work and upcoming forums, including, I believe, in September. But if are there any questions? If there are no questions, I'll turn it to Edmundo. I think we're good. Thank you again, Kayla. Really appreciate you hopping on today.
My pleasure, and I'll put that information in the chat before I go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kayla. All right. Well, next we are going to turn to marijuana. As everyone probably already knows, marijuana was legalized in Minnesota, and on August 1st, marijuana became legal. And while many people were celebrating that event, we need to really recognize that marijuana is still illegal on with the federal government, and it will cause problems for anyone who's not a U.S. citizen. And here to talk a little bit about those issues is Julia Decker from the Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota. Julia, thanks for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Edmundo, and thanks, Michelle. Hi, everybody. My name is Julia Decker. I am the policy director at Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota. And this, we can go into some more details if people have more specific questions, but I think the first and most important thing for everybody to understand is that because, as Edmundo said, marijuana is still federally controlled, it's still federally illegal. Anybody who's not a U.S. citizen, any involvement that a non-citizen has, even if they're a green card holder, even if they have some sort of immigration status, if they're not a citizen, any involvement with marijuana in Minnesota could still lead to immigration consequences up to and including deportation, removal. And so there's really no way around that, even though the state has legalized it. So I think it's just really important to start there with that understanding that the state legalization does not change the federal immigration law or consequences in any way. There is a second part of this, the law. I mean, there was a lot in the law, but specific to non-citizens around expungement of old records, convictions, things like that. That is still a little bit unclear as to exactly what that process is going to look like, what access to records will look like upon expungement. But one of the things that's really important is for folks to understand that even expungement of a state criminal conviction for like an old marijuana offense may still not have the effect in the federal immigration law of, making it so that it doesn't have an impact. Even an expunged conviction may still have some sort of ramification in the immigration laws. And the other piece of it is that as expungements move forward, it may be harder for non-citizens to get access to their own records, and for those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with immigration law, even for folks who are maybe looking to become a citizen, like they're doing the naturalization process, sometimes even the immigration agency will still ask for the old records from every single sort of thing in the past, including expunged records. And so non-citizens may still need to get access to those. And so as that is still up in the air, exactly what that process is going to look like, what the access is sort of going to look like. ILCM is monitoring that and trying to figure out what the process may look like and how best to communicate that information to the community. But it was a big law, obviously, big change, and so just a lot of things that are still being worked out. So those are the two main pieces I think that I want to make sure I communicated today to this group. I'm happy to try and answer some more specific questions, but I also think if you have a specific case question, like, oh, this person had X, Y, and Z, that it's better to contact me offline. I'll put my email in the chat and we can figure out, if there's a referral that needs to be made or, how best to handle that.
You're muted, Edmundo.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Julia. That was very helpful, and I think the expungement issues is really, really big because, as you said, people are going to still need their records, and I know that creates a problem for people in immigration proceedings or in immigration processing. Any questions for Julia about the new law or about expungements or anything she raised?
I do have a question as people are thinking. I was just going to type it into the chat, but I'll just shout it out instead. I'm curious about, I also want to express my gratitude, Julia, for sort of the last minute agreement to hop on and share this information with the group. Really valuable and important. And I've also seen the ILCM Facebook page. I would just like you to share, please, are there locations where people can get more information, including potentially in different languages? I imagine people will want to know more or eager to understand this better. So if there's a place where you may be able to direct them or suggest that people visit to get some more basic information and understand where to go if they have more questions that they would like to have answered.
Sure. So ILCM's initial graphic, I think, that we put out on this, that was basically just a warning, is in English and Spanish right now. I think there is a hope that we can have additional translations. And so on a variety of social media platforms, ILCM Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota, we're on Facebook and I believe Instagram and Twitter, or the app formerly known as Twitter. And so I would continue to check back on those forums as well as our website for any additional information that in additional languages. As to the more detailed information about expungements, obviously we will hope to get additional information about that when the time comes. So again, our website and social media will probably be the best places for that. But the most important information is if you're not a citizen, please don't engage with the otherwise legal marijuana market in Minnesota for the time being.
Right.
Very much appreciated.
I do have a follow-up kind of question, Julia, too. One of the areas where I think this is going to be really important is many refugee families come and they come with children, and the children are very young, and their parents may even get them green cards, make it permanent residence for them. And we've seen this in the past in other contexts, but the children don't ever naturalize. The parents don't naturalize for the children are 18, so the children kind of grow up and with just a green card. And then the children, get in trouble with juvenile authorities. They so I could see where, kids might be smoking marijuana because, all my friends in high school are smoking marijuana. So I was smoking marijuana and that creating a problem for them when they get older. So I'm wondering if there are any plans to really kind of do a focused education program on youth, and specifically for refugee youth, like for the different groups that have large numbers of refugees and green card holders, like the Korean, the Afghans, maybe the Ukrainians, and some of the other more recent arrivals.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And I don't know of any specific efforts, but I think that it probably would not be a bad idea to do some specific outreach to communities about just the issue specific to youth, and I think also just communities in general. I think something that also maybe people, a little bit of a nuance to this whole thing, is not only is it the potential criminal conviction, right, that can get folks in trouble in the immigration context if they're not a citizen, but there are instances where even admitting to facts that amount to possession of marijuana or some type of sale of marijuana, even if there was never a criminal conviction, can also have immigration consequences. And so even just the actions can sometimes become the problem in and of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's a really harsh consequence for what the state, Minnesota, has deemed to be not a criminal offense in a lot of instances. So
yeah, Julia, I think that's really helpful, that last point that you made, because I think that some may feel like, well, I'm not going to get a ticket for doing it, right? Because it's not against the law anymore. And so how would this even come up? And I know that just in reviewing some of the application processes, like there are specific questions. And so as you're talking about like use or, possession, distribution, what have you, potentially barring you from obtaining immigration benefits, and then the possibility of actually being placed into deportation proceedings. I think you've covered it well, but if there's any last thoughts you may want to share on that, just so that people understand, even if you're not getting a ticket, even if you're not getting arrested, there's still other ways in which that information may come to light. And so the suggestion that you're making at the outset is please don't, because there are consequences, or recognize that there are consequences, is excellent information. Again, we're really grateful that you came on to share with the group today.
Thank you, Julia. That was very helpful.
no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yep, anytime.
And I'll just go ahead and put the Facebook page for Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota into the chat so that people can check it and see the graphic there that is in English and Spanish.
Right. Michelle, our next topic is community-based organization introductions and updates. I don't know if any of the organizations that we thought might be on today are on.
Yep, so we'll just hold this space open for a quickie second. If there's someone with a community-based organization that wanted to share some information about who you are and what you do, we wanted to make sure to give space for people to highlight their important work at every Twin Cities Immigration Forum. So if there's anyone who'd like to take the mic and share some information right now, please feel free to do so. And if not, please reach out to Edmundo and myself if you'd like to share at a future forum. So we'll just hold it open for a quick moment and then transition to the next topic that we have on the agenda.
Michelle, I think
Okay.
next would upcoming events.
Yep. So actually there's another, let's see, there's another quick bullet point on immigration news. One piece of information that we wanted to share, and I know we've brought this to the forum before, is the Afghan Adjustment Act. And just to get this topic on people's radar, the Afghan Adjustment Act is a bill that would provide a pathway for Afghans in the United States to apply for permanent residence, rather than being required to go through the asylum process or special immigrant visa processing. This bill was reintroduced in the House and Senate just in July, and a local organization that advocates for human rights is very involved and engaged on this topic. If you would like to learn more, please visit the Advocates for Human Rights webpage. And if you are interested in learning more about advocacy opportunities, a point of contact who has joined the Twin Cities Immigration Forum in the past is Lindsay Greisig, and I will put her contact information in the chat as well. And I'll turn it to you, Edmundo, if you want to start covering the upcoming events.
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. Well, we have the city of Minneapolis and St. Paul have been in a one-year-long initiative to promote citizenship and naturalization in our cities. Between the two of us, we have over 20,000 permanent residents who are technically eligible to naturalize. So we've been doing a series of immigration and citizenship resource fairs. Our next fair will be on Saturday, August 12th from 2 to 4 p.m. at the Cedar Riverside Opportunity Center here in Minneapolis. We will have legal service providers and English class providers, and also representatives from Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, where both the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul have worked to develop the New American Loan program, which is a loan which is offered to people who are looking to naturalize and don't necessarily have the money up front to pay for the filing fees and some of the other costs associated with naturalization. They can borrow up to $2,000 from Affinity Plus through Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union at zero interest. So it's a zero interest loan. There is a $75 loan application fee, $50 of which is returned to the borrower once the loan is paid off. Affinity also has a take a month off program, so you can actually take 13 months to pay off the zero interest loan, and it's it's a pretty good deal for people who are looking to naturalize who may not qualify for a fee waiver but don't have enough money, to come up with that $725 up front. So we'll be just having legal service providers and discussing the loan and other issues that might come up around naturalization this Saturday. Also, there are several events in the Twin Cities over the next couple of weeks around immigration. There is a immigration resource fair that's going to be hosted at the St. Stephen's Lutheran Church in Bloomington. The cities of Bloomington and Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota will be hosting a resource fair where people will be able to get free legal consultations on topics including asylum, U visas, T visas, naturalization, deferred action for childhood arrivals, country-specific parole programs, VAWA, which is Violence Against Women's Act, special immigrant juvenile status, and much more. So if people need legal consultations, they can also attend this resource fair in the city of Bloomington on Saturday, the 19th of August. I know that Hennepin County is also holding with Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid, will also be holding a resource clinic where people can get consultations regarding their naturalization applications. And I believe that is that August 15th, Michelle? I'm doing that one from memory. August 15th. Do you remember the location?
11 to 5.
11 to 5.
I'm looking for the flyer right now. I did send out the flyer to the group. I see somebody just put a message in the chat. Yes, so Carmen, there are flyers for the resource fairs and clinics. I sent those out to the group, and we'll follow up again with those flyers after today's meeting.
Hello? Yeah, hello.
Great. All right, and then finally, we do have the second annual Festival of Rights, which is going to be held at Beautiful Laundrette on the west side of St. Paul on Sunday, August 20th from 1 to 7, from 1 to 5. There'll be an organizations fair where there'll be speeches about know your rights. There'll be free comprehensive immigration screenings with advice from immigration attorneys. There'll be a food truck and activities for the children. Then from 5 to 7, there'll be live music by Malamania, and then food trucks. So we'll also put a link or a flyer, attach a flyer to the notes from this meeting for that event as well. I know, Michelle, there are several driver's license for all events. Maybe you want to cover those. Upcoming.
Sorry. I know we've committed to sharing updated information about driver's licenses for all to ensure that community is informed and knows where to go to learn about how to obtain a driver's license and start the process in preparation of October 1st, which is the implementation date for driver's licenses for all, where anyone, regardless of immigration status, is able to access a driver's license or a state ID. There are several community-based organizations that are very engaged in sharing information with community, including one called Minnesota Immigrant Movement, which is giving trainings for the manual driver's license theory classes. They have several locations in Minneapolis and suburban areas where they're offering this class. I've been given a telephone number to share for people who are interested in taking a class. The telephone number is 612-246-1146. 1149. Again, it's 612-246-1149. And that is through the Minnesota Immigrant Movement. I also want to remind folks that the Driver and Vehicle Services page on the Department of Public Safety, there's a driver's license for all page with a great deal of information about events that are taking place in the future, events that have taken place. And it does seem like there is additional resource information that is being communicated through that page. So I just put the page into the chat as well. And then also, as Edmundo indicated, the event that's taking place in Bloomington on Saturday the 19th, there will be a driver's license for all component. And I believe that that component is being handled by Unidos Minnesota, which is another one of the organizations that is very engaged in providing information to communities so people understand the process and are ready to go. One other organization that is also doing this type of work is COPAL. So Minnesota Immigrant Movement, Unidos Minnesota, and COPAL. Happy to answer questions that people may have. And I think that that was all that I wanted to share as far as driver's license for all updates are concerned. I don't have an extra credit update this month, unfortunately. We have one next month. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. I guess we'll open it up for anyone who may want to make an announcement or have any additional comments or topics for discussion. We'll just open it up for a few minutes. Otherwise, we can finish up early today and let you get out in the summer. Maybe go for a nice walk before it gets too dark. All right. Well, I thank everyone for joining us today. We look forward to hopefully maybe seeing you this Saturday at our naturalization fair. If not, we will see you next month at the next Twin Cities Immigration Forum, which I believe is on, give me a second, the second Thursday of the month, which is going to be
The 14th.
14th of September. Also, our next immigration fair, our naturalization fair in September will be on September 9th. And it's probably going to be at the Wilder Center, and we'll be sending out a lot more information about that event in the coming weeks. So thank you very, very much, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody. Please know these sessions are available on the OIR webpage, usually within a few days. So if you found this information useful, please do watch the recording. Feel free to share it with others who may find it useful as well. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.